This is a Daniel Defense MK18, and between all the parts and accessories on it, it's got over $6,000 invested into it. For years in the firearm industry, there have been people that have said if you don't spend this amount of money on a rifle, then you're compromising on safety, reliability, usability, and a whole host of other things. Because of that, if you only have $600 to spend on your first AR-15 like I did, then you might pick up something secondhand that looks a lot like this. I bought a gun that was painted almost completely like this, and the parts were cheap, the paint was amateur, and it was just all around a terrible purchase by me. Today, I'm gonna show you how to avoid my mistake, and we're gonna build an entire AR-15 from scratch using high quality components, using only that same $600 budget that I had in the first place. But just building a gun isn't enough. Later in the video, we're gonna take my gun with Josh's $6,000 MK18 out to the range, put them up against each other in a side-by-side test to see if this one completely knocks my gun off its butt, or if I can build something that can truly stand up against this MK18. Let's dive in together. Here's the brutal reality. If I had just bought a random $400 off-the-shelf rifle to go up against a military grade MK18, it would be a complete bloodbath, and this thing would win super easily. Those mass-produced budget rifles have massive corners cut because they're trying to hit a price point. So to even stand a chance on the range today, I need to spend my $600 with precision. So my rifle doesn't feel like a cheap toy when I give it over to Josh to test. Let's break down exactly what this build is before we go out to the range though. Before I get into the build, I need to address one thing. The question I received throughout the short series I did documenting the parts I was picking out. In almost every one of those videos, I got comments asking why I would spend $600 building a gun from scratch when I could have just bought a $300 PSA or a $350 Radical RF-15 or a $400 M&P Sport, or maybe $500 or $600 on a Ruger 5.56. That's a good question, and by the end of this video, we're going to answer that question to truly see if it's a smarter choice to build an AR from scratch or if I should have just bought one off the shelf. What I'll say right now, though, is when I bought my first AR, it was a hodgepodge of different parts that I got secondhand, and it had a lot of problems because of it. Problems that we'll get into throughout the video. The main idea here is that I would spend the same amount of money that I would spend on my first AR trying to correct all the mistakes that I made when I first bought this pre-built hunk of junk. First trap of budget pre-built ARs is the furniture. They give you the mil-spec M4 pistol grips, the hard plastic stocks that beat up your collarbone and just feel terrible. Josh's MK18 feels like an extension of his body, at least that's what he keeps telling me. After searching and searching, the deal I got on my first part was nuts. Got it. I looked high and low for this deal, and it included as many components that I could find. And I really couldn't believe it, guys. I actually found an awesome deal on a completely assembled lower receiver from Gun Deals. This lower included a pretty basic single stage trigger, all of the mil-spec parts that we need, and a carbine buffer spring and buffer, as well as a Magpul furniture kit with a Mo stock and a Mo pistol grip. That Mo furniture is actually the biggest thing that caught my eye, because at first I was planning on building my lower receiver from scratch using pretty mil-spec parts like the M4 pistol grip and stock, which are way less comfortable, at least for me anyway. Especially that stock, because the hard plastic right up against my collarbone from the M4 just feels terrible to me. At least the Mo has this little bit of rubber in the butt pad to help absorb a little bit of that recoil. Texturing on the Mo pistol grip is also a nice touch, and I would say it's a little bit of an upgrade from the M4 pistol grip. Plus, I'm not really a huge fan of those little nubs. While I'm not the biggest fanboy of the Mo furniture, it's a whole heck of a lot better than the mil-spec M4 stock and pistol grip, so I'm happy to get a little bit of an upgrade here. And besides, I know Josh loves these things, so I might be gaming the game a little bit here. Just goes to show that if you guys are really short on cash, like I am for this video, then it's worth doing some digging. Look at the places that you know and love, but also don't be afraid to dig around some other websites to see if there are some fair discounts. And who knows, if those discounts aren't there today, then they might be there tomorrow. So you might always want to check and do some checking frequently to see if you can find the deal. But how much was this thing in total? Well, the whole package was for the crisp price of 150 bucks. A real steal of a deal considering it's the foundation of my whole setup. Just a quick administrative note here, guys. To streamline things up a bit and save extra shipping time and FFL transfer paperwork that we usually have to go through around here, I made a choice. I sourced every part from the original kit except the stripped lower receiver. Instead, I'm using one of our in-house AT3 receivers that I already had here in the studio. It keeps the logistics much simpler for us, but rest assured, if you guys want a deal just like this, you sure can get it. You'll just have to pay the little bit of extra FFL transfer fees. The biggest thing I noticed about this kit, though, was the trigger that it came with was gritty. It had lots of take up and the whole gun just felt cheap and gross with it in there. Even though this thing did come with a trigger, I allocated some of my budget to swap out the mil-spec trigger with an upgraded nickel Teflon trigger. That enhanced coating significantly reduces friction between the sear and the hammer, resulting in a smoother, crisper pull without the gritty feel of most mil-spec triggers. I felt like I really had to invest here, guys, because I'm going up against a $250 Geisley trigger in Josh's Mark 18. So I had to really spend the money where it counted here. For the heart of the build, the barrel and the BCG, I went with some of the least expensive components that I could find, and I'll explain why in just a second, but first let me tell you what I got. For the barrel, I got a 16-inch 4150 CMV barrel from BCA. The bolt carrier group is also a BCA special, but both items together cost me only about 120 bucks. Now, if you've watched Josh's barrel series, then you'll know all about this, but the SparkNotes version here is that 4150 is going to have a much higher tensile strength and therefore more resistant to heat over time. This means the longevity of the barrel is going to be a lot more like 15 to 20,000 rounds instead of the 12 to 15,000 rounds that most 4140 barrels are going to give you. It's worth noting that many entry-level AR-15s, such as those from PSA or Radical Firearms, typically use the 4140 barrels. These are cost-effective and easier to mass produce, which helps manufacturers keep prices low. Speaking of upgrading though, there's a lot that can be said about the BCG and the barrel to make it more accurate, but I'm actually gonna save that for a little bit later on in the video because I want to keep showing off what I built for you guys. So let's keep it moving. Next up is our choice of handguard, and that's something that I noticed a lot of the time when I was looking at off-the-shelf AR-15s, is that they typically come with drop-in handguards. If you don't know what these are, guys, then they're the old school handguard style that requires a delta ring and typically a front sight post to be able to mount. And that's really something that I don't really vibe with a lot, considering the modern free float handguards exist now, and they're plentiful. They give you all kinds of mounting options that you could think of to mount on today, including M-LOK, pick rails, or even key mod. To give us an easy upgrade from the basic stuff, I'm gonna go with the 2A Basics handguard for about 71 bucks. This is something that I wanted to pay an extra close attention to because the handguard that I got from my original AR for 600 bucks ended up being poorly machined, and so much so that the M-LOK slots cut my hands if I gripped them too tightly, guys. It was terrible. I really like this handguard because, number one, the price is right, but number two, it has M-LOK slots all the way around it, including the 45-degree position, which is typically where I like to mount my weapon-mounted lights. With these M-LOK slots, it also means that this thing is nice and lightweight, so it's easy for me to get in and out of a car, onto a range, or just maneuvering it around while I'm training. Let's keep this next part pretty quick. For the upper receiver and the charging handle, I went pretty basic, choosing a slick side upper receiver and a mil-spec charging handle. Normally with the charging handles, if I'm not going to go with something like a Breek Warhammer or an Armaspec Victory, then at least I'm gonna throw in a extended tack latch to the mil-spec charging handle just to make it a little bit easier to index. But my budget wouldn't even allow me that much, so I just have to rock with the regular mil-spec charging handle for now. The upper receiver, though, was a bit of a find. I found it on AR-15 discounts, and it was on sale from MBS for about 70% off. So that was a deal I was willing to jump on. But it didn't include a dust cover, so I had to get a dust cover kit from AT3 for about $4 or so. Gas block, gas tube, and muzzle device were, again, pretty simple. All parts that I sourced from AT3 because, again, we're just shooting a 5.56 16-inch AR-15, so I don't need to add any kind of fancy adjustable gas blocks or any fancy stuff just yet. What's nice, though, is these pre-built gas tube kits that have the gas block and roll pin already installed, so that saves me some time building. I just went with a low-profile gas block with a mid-length gas tube, and then I rounded it out with an A2 bird cage for like $9. Super simple, and it'll get the job done every time, assuming I can align this gas block correctly. Okay, you think we're done building, right? That's exactly what I thought, but I apparently was wrong. Because when I first started building the gun, I had thought that the $600 budget did not include an aiming system or an optic that I had to use. I mean, it seems reasonable, right? Anytime I go to a gun store or buy an off-the-shelf AR-15, it usually doesn't include an optic in the price. But when I asked Josh, he said, nope, I had to include some type of aiming system with this build included in the $600 budget. Luckily for me, we have a 3D printer here in the office, and I tried my hand at printing what I thought were some pretty fun iron sights. Let's go ask Josh if I can use these. Hey, Josh.
What is that?
Hear me out.
What is it?
I 3D printed free iron sights.
How are you going to adjust the windage? Can we even say 3D printed on YouTube? No, go get some regular iron sights or something. Figure it out.
Well, looks like that didn't work. So I'm gonna have to move some things around, look for some more deals, but eventually I did find enough room in the budget to get some basic AT3 iron sights. Since I did move some things around though, I did have a little bit of extra room in my budget, but now I'm going to throw on a couple of FDE rail covers to help my grip, but then also to color match from the front and back of my AR since the furniture kit that I got was FDE. So throwing in a FDE magazine with these rail covers ends up making this thing look pretty intentionally built, unlike my first AR. I want to go back to the BCG and barrel discussion for just a quick minute before we go out to the range and give it to Josh to test this thing out. The question that I'm having is what would it actually cost to see a meaningful difference from getting a $350 off-the-shelf gun to building our own? One way to see an instant performance difference would be to grab a different barrel and stick it in your AR. I have two targets right here. One was shot with 4140 steel barrel and the other was a 4150 steel barrel. You can see here that there is a meaningful accuracy jump from the 4150 upgraded barrel, and that's one of the reasons that I went with it in the first place. Let me give you another example here. This target was shot with a cold hammer forged Geisley barrel, a process of barrel manufacturing that is way more high-end than any of those other two barrels that we've been talking about. You would have to get a barrel like this to see a meaningful accuracy jump just based on the barrel alone. And you want to know how much this barrel costs? Well, it's around $300. Many times it's more expensive than that. So let me be the devil's advocate here for just 1 second. An alternative scenario is that we could have just spent about $300 on the most inexpensive AR-15 that we could have found, and then spent another $300 just swapping out the barrel, and bam, that AR is immediately better performing and its longevity is way better. And all of that while spending just about $600 that we spent on our budget build here. Alternatively, we could have spent $300 on better ammo that might help our accuracy, maybe buy something like an LPVO to help us magnify closer to the target. That's definitely going to help our accuracy. Or we could have spent around $300 on a class or several classes to get better at our fundamentals, and that's going to supercharge our performance and accuracy as well as our skills, of course. All I'm trying to say here is that just because something is bottom of the barrel doesn't mean that it's bad, and just because you get something that is slightly upgraded doesn't mean it's going to be the most accurate, best thing, highest performing gun possible. Sometimes you have to really pay the big bucks to get any kind of measurable impact. Okay, it's the moment we've been waiting for. Let's take this thing out to the range, put it up against Josh's $6,000 Daniel, and see how it does. Welcome to our local range here, guys, over at Target Sports. We always love coming over here. So the very first test we're gonna do is the accuracy and velocity test. So I have a 16-inch barrel. Josh has a 10.3-inch barrel, and he has a way higher quality barrel than I do, guys. I have a 4150 CMV barrel. So we're gonna see just how big of a difference the accuracy of the barrel really makes. So what we're gonna do, we have a target set up right here at 50 yards. We're gonna shoot both guns at 50 yards. Josh with his Mark 18, he's got a Trijicon Optic on this thing. I have a $600 gun with iron sights. We're gonna test the accuracy to see if that Trijicon Optic with that nice quality barrel, we're gonna see if that really makes a big difference in the accuracy, and we're going to find out if my gun can truly stand up against Josh's gun. Let's try it right now. Let's get going.
2613 there at the end. Let me see. Through the Trijicon ACOG, we can see that I had 2 that I kind of pulled. That's on me, but that's why we shoot 10-round shot groups. Majority of them seem to be right here in the B. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that aren't in this group, and then we've got a real tight 5-round shot group right here. All right, so our minimum FPS was 2584. Our max was 2621. Our average FPS on the Mark 18 was 2603. We had a standard deviation of 13.4 feet per second. We had an extreme spread of 37.4 feet per second. We can throw all this onto a spreadsheet if you guys want to see it. Let us know down in the comments section. That's the ballistic data for that. Now we're going to do the 16-inch barrel. I'm expecting probably around a 2,900 feet per second average, and we might have a slightly larger extreme spread. So these are both a 1 and 7-inch twist rate on the barrel, and we're shooting 55 grain X-Tac. And that X-Tac comes from our friends at Bolt Munitions. All right, so first impressions with CJ's rifle. We have not shot this. We have not zeroed it. We're gonna find out if he built it correctly, because that might be something you run into as an issue when you're building your very first gun. You might not install something right, and then the gun doesn't function. We'll see if CJ did his part. But my initial first impression of this gun is it's pretty lightweight for a 16-inch gun. I think a lot of that has to do with all of the weight savings in the handguard. Probably could have saved a little more without these, but these will be nice for adding a little bit of grip. So it looks like he's got maybe like a Battle Arms development or the AT3 nickel Teflon trigger in there, the enhanced trigger. It's a really good mil-spec trigger. Has a little less grit and a little less break. He went with the Mo furniture, which I think he's trying to like win me over and cheat, because he knows these are my budget go-tos when I can't run Daniel stuff or when I can't afford to run B5 stuff on a build. These are definitely number 3 for me. Yeah, overall, so far it looks good. Now let's just see if it runs and how tight the group is. Hopefully the iron sights aren't too bad off. I'm gonna be aiming center mass, but it might be low, it might be high, it might be left, it might be right. I'm not gonna make any of those adjustments on this right now. We just wanna see how it clocks on the chrono and how it holds a group down range. All right, going hot. Tell you what, this shoots a lot gassier. Shooting through the iron sights not being as enjoyable of a process as I remember, especially when you're comparing it to like modern red dot sights or something like the Trijicon ACOG. Let's go ahead and look at the chrono real quick. So we're shooting this out of the 16-inch Bear Creek Arsenal or BCA barrel. We have a minimum velocity of 2901, max of 2986. Our average velocity was 2934.5. So we had a standard deviation of 24.2 FPS. Extreme spread was 85, which is quite a bit higher. And then you can see all the rest of our data here. Shooting again that same 55 grain ammunition. Let's go ahead and pull this down and take a look at our group real quick. What we're looking at here is the 10-round shot group. It's shooting just a little bit low. My point of aim was on the B. We could see that I had, this guy over here is a bit of a flyer. We have a couple that are a little bit higher. And then we've got kind of like the rest of our 7 rounds right here. Not as tight as the Daniel Defense barrel, but that's to be expected on 2 counts. And the first, most important of those counts is the other rifle has a $1,500 Trijicon ACOG, some of the best glass in the industry on it. It's really at the like the bottom of high end is what I would call that Trijicon. If you like the Trijicon ACOG or you hate it, it's definitely going to make it so it's easier to shoot the weapon than something like these old school iron sights. But you got like a $1,400 difference in the cost there. Overall, this isn't a bad group for you know, just a cheap, like what, $80 BCA barrel. Let's get on to that next test. CJ, let me know what we're doing.
For our second test, I'm calling it the group test. And we're gonna do something kind of similar to our barrel testing methodology that we did just a couple of videos back. What we're gonna do here is me and Josh are both gonna fire 30 rounds, 1 shot every 1 second, and heat our barrels up to the max. Then we're going to shoot a group of 5 rounds at a target and see how much the group opens up. I'm not exactly sure what's gonna happen here. We're gonna see if my group opens up to the point where it's totally unusable, or if it actually stays tighter than what we expect and can actually hold its own against the Mark 18. Let's do that right now.
All right, first up, we got the Daniel Defense. We're gonna hit the top left target there. And then for our 5-round group, we'll go for the bottom left target. You ready, CJ?
I'm ready.
All right, we are hot. Here goes our 30 round to heat it up. All right, there's our 30. We heated it up. And then we're gonna hit 5 rounds. I'm just gonna put that in the bottom left shot group there.
Whoa.
As we can see, here's our 30-round shot group that's fired through the Trijicon RMR. And then we've got a nice tight 5-round shot group right here. We're gonna be shooting on the right side. Here comes our 30-round shot group. And then I've got my 5-round magazine right here. That'll go in the bottom right target. So one thing, noticing right off the bat, this one's smoking a little bit more, but the trigger sticks just a little bit more than the Daniel. And that probably boils down to the $250 trigger versus, I don't know, CJ probably spent like $50 on this one or something. He said whatever it was, but I don't know what that was. It's definitely a cheaper trigger. It feels good. It's just not as responsive as the Geissele trigger. All right, here goes our 5-round shot group. I don't know if you guys can pick this up on the cameras. This barrel does smoke a lot more than the other barrel did. And you can feel quite a bit more heat coming through the handguard. So I'm actually really appreciating that CJ spent the extra $10 to put these on here. Because if I were to actually run this gun at that speed, I'd probably want to wear gloves, but this actually makes a huge difference having it basically on either side of the gas block. So when it comes to mag dumping into trash, yeah, this group is a little bit bigger than this group over here. But, and you know, I was able to do this one just a little bit faster. Overall, I don't think there's a 90% difference between these two guns if we're just doing a mag dumping into trash test. I bet if we did my super scientific box measuring technique around this group would be maybe 1/4 of an inch larger than this group at the most. Overall, that's pretty impressive. But again, this isn't a super scientific test. CJ and I aren't a certified laboratory making ballistics data tests. We're 2 guys building guns and just having a good time.
Our last test is gonna be the maneuverability test. And guys, you see behind me, we have a course of fire all set up. So Josh is going to take his Mark 18 and he's gonna take the 2A basic $600 build and run the exact same course of fire 2 separate times with both guns. And then we're gonna ask him which one he likes better. Now, The Mark 18 is obviously kitted out just for this type of thing, the run and gun experience, but my gun is lighter and it is slightly easier to maneuver. So we're gonna get Josh's honest take on which one is easier to move around some barricades and just get shooting some targets fast and quickly. So let's go ahead and move on to the test. Josh, let's get going.
First up, we've got my Daniel Defense Mark 18. I made this gun to hunt pigs in Texas. It's designed really for the 50 to 100 yard range. And yeah, it's got a Chujicon ACOG on it. Other than that, it's pretty much a bone stock Daniel Defense Mark 18 with a Surefire RC3. Beep.
How'd that feel?
It felt like my Mark 18 that I've shot about a gajillion times. All right, now for CJ's perfectly average AR that he built for 600 bucks. It's got a little bit longer of a barrel, so beep. Trigger on this is just a little bit sticky. It's not as easy or as fast to acquire these iron sights, but to be expected. I mean, it's a perfectly serviceable rifle. There's nothing wrong with it. It runs great. It's super comfortable. The recoil is a little bit harsher and the gun is a lot louder. But again, this is 600 bucks. It's 10% of what I have invested into that. Would I say this is like 90% less gun than the Mark 18? No. Not really. Is it as fun to shoot as the Mark 18? No, not really. But if this were my very first firearm, I'd be super stoked on it. It's a good firearm. CJ did a good job picking this one out and building it. It runs great.
Josh, thanks so much for helping me out with all of these tests. So for our next video, I tell you what, I'm gonna give you $400. You gave me $600, so I'm gonna give you $400 to put $400 worth of upgrades into this thing and make it a $1,000 gun. What do you say to that?
Does that include the optic?
You know what? We're gonna say yes.
Oh. So I get 400 bucks to upgrade this thing.
That's right.
So now I guess the next question is, am I upgrading it for competition? Am I upgrading for fighting? Am I upgrading it just for mag dumping the trash like this build was for?
Whatever you think.
Whatever I think. How about we let the audience decide in the community poll?
All right.
Let's do that. We'll see you guys up there.
Yep. Let's toss it back to the studio. Wrap this thing up. So after all that work and effort, guys, did I learn the things and fix all my mistakes that I made with my first AR? Well, I think so. And I think that this gun is actually way better than the first one that I ever got. But should I have just bought an off-the-shelf AR-15 and just ran with that and upgraded that over time? Well, honestly, guys, either way is just fine. For people like me who like to have control over every detent, every little crush washer, and every little spring that goes onto my AR, then the building route is definitely the way to go. But a lot of people just like to buy stock rifles and then upgrade them as they choose to make it their own and fit their use case. Either way, I'm not hating on you guys. Either way is totally fine. But if you already own a cheap stock AR-15 and $600 is too rich for your blood right now, I get it, guys. There is a way to make it perform like a $1,000 rifle using just $100. Josh breaks down the exact parts you need to buy it in this video right here. Check it out and he'll see you over there. Having a hair that's like directly in front of my...
When you go to gun deals, the first thing you see
is guns. Mouth breathing comments. We don't need those. Like, dope. This is like the biggest freaking paragraph I ever wrote. How do you like that?